Welcome, everyone. My name is Nguyen Tran. I'm the CRA director. Thank you for joining us on a work night. But we made this meeting after hours to see how many people we can really encompass into this public outreach meeting, and there was a lot of people that signed up. So I'm sure a lot of people will come online relatively soon. You're here for the McNab House Botanical Gardens Community Outreach Meeting. This is our second stakeholder meeting. As a recap, we had the first stakeholder meeting on December 1st, 2020. And if those of you that were on that Zoom meeting, you recall that we started out with a blank slate. So anything that you have seen on this project before, with the renderings and the house move, we started that December 1st meeting with a blank slate, and true to our word, we continued that blank slate. That was our first outreach meeting where we asked the public for public input on what they'd like to see, when we designed this park. With us today, we have Bermello Ajamil Partners. That is our architect firm to help us design and come up with this conceptual master plan, which you're about to see. This is probably one of the most exciting projects that we have done. That is a very transformative project. Like I said, our first outreach meeting was December 1st. We took about 5 months to really look at all the public input that we received from the last meeting, and to really thoughtfully come up with a conceptual plan that incorporates everything that we can come up with, as well as the public comments, to come up with a plan that is beneficial for everybody, and really do this park in a way where the actual citizens and the residents can enjoy it. One of the most important things that we did while moving this house is trying to design the botanical gardens around the historic nature of the house. As you'll see from Randy's presentation, that was very important, because this project would never have happened if we didn't try to save the house. And I'd like to thank the Pompano Beach Historical Society for their support, because it was their initiative and their support that saved this historic structure, which is a huge part of Pompano Beach's history. So while you see the presentation, you'll see the careful consideration that we tried not to touch the house at all. So at this stage, the house and the garage is exactly the way it is and what it was, even in terms of elevations from the previous site. So again, thank you to Pompano Beach Historical Society to allow us, the CRA, to really take on this transformative project that will change this side of the Atlantic Boulevard on this side of the Intercoastal. So before I introduce the Bermello Ajamil Partners, that design team, I'm just going to lay out how this meeting is going to go. We'll see the presentations. You'll see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A button. So write down your questions, type in your questions. We will address the questions at the end of the presentations. At this point, I'd like to introduce Randy Hollingsworth. He is the lead architect for Bermello Ajamil, and his team consists of James Bowers, also Kirk Olney, and Alfredo Sanchez. So with that said, I will turn this over to Randy Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Nguyen. We're really excited about showing you what we've kind of worked on for the last couple months, and come up with a concept plan that I think really will certainly stimulate a lot of conversation, and I think it will hopefully get some really positive feedback and some positive criticism of what we can do better to make the plan a plan that works for everyone in the community. And I think that's our overriding goal. Most of this presentation is new. You may have seen, I may be covering one or two things that we covered in the presentation back in December, but for the most part, this is taking from that point on and looking at how we could develop a concept that was most appropriate for this project. The mission statement for this assignment for us and for the city to develop maintain a plant collection for the purpose of display, education, conservation, and enjoyment. And that's the essence of what a botanical garden is. It's unlike a park, which tends to have more of a recreational focus or a retail venue or anything like that. This is very, very unique because the entire project is centered around sort of a botanical nature. And fortunately, we also have the opportunity to center it around a historic landmark structure, being the McNab House, which we kind of really got both things very positive with the opportunities for this project. The goals for the gardens, there are really 5 main goals. One of them is to provide public open space. I think that's very important. It's going to be a different type of public open space, but it is certainly going to be a facility that is available to the community to use on a daily basis. It'll be a unique cultural amenity for the community. We'll show you in the presentation how we've introduced that and how the opportunities are for that as we develop the plan for the park. Of course, very importantly, as Nuad said, was the adaptive reuse of the historical landmark structure being the McNab House. And that plays a critical part in the design component of this project. I think there's an opportunity here to create a platform for cultural arts, more than just the botanical aspect, also all of the different cultural aspects of what the community can offer and how we can display that in this facility. And lastly is the opportunity to educate visitors on the Florida landscape. And whether that's local residents, visitors coming from out of town, I think we have a unique opportunity here to educate people on this sort of fantastic environment and landscape in which we live. One of the most important parts for us in developing this project was to come up with something that was uniquely Pompano Beach. That is a challenge. Many communities have kind of taken on this character that all very similar. We wanted to be unique and that not just be another botanical garden there are several in South Florida. We looked at botanical gardens all over the United States and try to look at what made them unique for the different communities, which also tends to make them much more successful because they are specific to the community in which they are located. Clearly, the history of Pompano Beach, the McNab brothers, which one of the brothers owned the house that's now on the site, the history of the family, the farming history, how it was originally focused on Lettuce Lake, and that was the sort of the center of the farming community in Pompano Beach. They obviously developed in other areas of business, but the origination of the farm community, the land, and the water feature are all parts of what we're looking at as we develop this concept. Secondly, the Florida landscape and the site itself. This is a fantastic site. It's got some great tree canopy, which we're going to certainly look at preserving, altering, maintaining, improving. Clearly, the site now is not a botanical garden. It's a city park. And we understand that we want to preserve some of the components of that, but make it much, much better. And I think the site really is a great opportunity to do that. The Pompano Beach context itself, the city, clearly a history of a city that's related to the water, the oceanfront, and all the intercoastal waterway system. The name, in fact, being named after a fish theoretically, because I've heard other reasons why it's called Pompano Beach. But I think that there's a clear element of the history that we will look at as we develop the concept. And as I said, the Florida landscape is very important, whether it be the natural Florida landscape or sort of the more man-made botanical sort of subtropical nature that you see a lot of private landscapes throughout South Florida and the Pompano Beach area. These are all elements that we'll be looking at how we can incorporate into this project and make it unique from other botanical gardens. Major purpose of the gardens is, first of all, display. That's clearly the botanical aspect of this project. Education is something that we'll be focused on as we develop the plan and the ongoing operations of the gardens themselves. I think it offers a great opportunity for passive recreation, that this will be open to the community to enjoy on a daily basis. Entertainment is something that I think we can incorporate so that we can expand on the opportunities for different attractions in the gardens, and not just be a botanical garden, but it be an element that represents different aspects of the community. Certainly celebration. We looked at gardens around the country, and it's amazing what some of these gardens do to interact with the local community, whether it's yoga classes or special events on New Year's Eve, or bird watching classes, or there's such an array of activities, and certainly the opportunity to celebrate the community at this garden will be there as we develop the design. And finally, cultural. And I think we have some really interesting ideas on how we'll incorporate that aspect into the overall park design. This is the site that we have today. And just for orientation, north is to your left. This is the site as it fronts on Atlantic Boulevard. The house, probably for most of you know, has been sited on the northeast corner and under the big red dot. That's where the house itself and the garage have been relocated to. The tree symbols that you're seeing on the plan is really a representation of much of the canopy that's on the site now, and how it's spread across the site. Some of it in great opportunities for us. Either we may want to relocate plant material and things like that, but we're going to work closely with the city to preserve as much as we can and enhance the landscape of the site. Clearly, on-street parking is something that we're going to expand on and provide as much as possible, because we didn't want to use the site to create a parking lot. We thought that would be a lost opportunity, but we realized that as this project develops and it attracts people, we want to make sure that it does not put pressure on the adjacent neighborhood, whether that's developing some off-street parking on city-owned land or expanding the on-street parking. We realize that's a very important part of this and making it successful. There is an advantage, of course, being on Atlantic Avenue. That's our front door. But from a botanical garden point of view, it's not so great to be on a very noisy artery such as Atlantic. And it certainly gives us a great front door, though, for the restaurant component in the McNab House. And so we have the advantage of being there, but we also want to create sort of this inter sanctum of the park, that when you're in the botanical gardens themselves, you really feel like you're in this sort of world that's completely unique and different from the context around it and the urban nature of the city around it. Clearly, one of the most important aspects of the park is this very, very large ficus tree, which I'm sure many of you have seen. It's located right behind the McNab House. It's existing on the site, and we saw that as a really unique opportunity to sort of use as a key element of the project in this concept that we've developed. And integrate that element with water is, I think, something you're going to see very clearly in the developing of the conceptual master plan, which we're going to show today. And I'll present that right now. This is the plan that we have at this point, and I'm going to give you a walkthrough through the gardens to explain all the different components, because it's hard to understand all the different aspects of this graphic. But I think after you experience the walkthrough, you'll understand exactly what we're trying to create. Starting with the entry, the main gate or the main arrival plaza from the west, you'll enter into the gardens, and one of the first things you're going to see is this tree, which has now been centered on a lake, and it's on its own island, and it's surrounded by water. And this will become a focal point of the entire gardens as you walk around the gardens. So I think it'll be a spectacular component of the project, and something that we really want to play off and protect the tree and make it a focal point. As you leave the main entry, you'll head southward along a walkway. The yellow walkway is the primary walkway that takes you around the entire garden. The red walkways are sort of these side small walkways you take as sort of garden paths that will take you through the individual gardens. And each of these will have a theme behind them. We haven't decided what those are yet, and there's a lot to choose from, but there'll be different types of gardens that you walk through and enjoy. And it may be 3 or 4, it may be 2. We haven't really designed that at all at this point, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to develop that as we move forward. At the end of this first walk, you will come to what we're calling the Tea House Garden Cafe. And this will be an elevated area that will be a cafe facility that you can sit outside, have refreshments, and enjoy the park. It will have a spectacular view toward the east and the other elements that I'm going to be talking about as we move through the garden. It's situated on a lake, Upper Terrace Lake, which is connected to the large lake around the ficus tree with a stream that will have an entire garden focused on that component of the actual project itself. As you leave this area, you will then continue on to another set of gardens, which we're calling the East Gardens. And again, there'll be a series of gardens that have different themes, and you can take a side path walkway that will take you through the gardens with identification of plant material and learning about the different types of plant material in each of the different garden types. From there, you head toward the lake and past what we call the central lawn. This will be a big open lawn area for used for different flexible events and things like that. And that ends up in the event pavilion. And this is a new facility on the site, which will house an open space, interior open space that can have weddings, community activities, community meetings, different classes, and all different types of events in this facility. And this is a brand new building on the site itself. And it's centered on the lake. So again, as part of that sort of focal point of the entire project. From there, you head to the McNab House facility, and which is the, we're going to talk a little bit more about the detail of that and how that's been developed, but this is the whole north east corner of the site. You have the house itself, you will have and different areas around it for outdoor dining and cafe, all located on, focused on the lake feature, and also the courtyard bar, which is a reuse of the historic garage facility. From there, we come down to what we think is a really exciting part of the project, which is going to be the children's garden. And this will also have restrooms and a classroom on the actual gardens. And I'll explain that a little bit further as I move in through other slides. But this is an opportunity to really create a unique component for families to come and enjoy. And also with a botanical theme. It's not just going to be a playground. It's going to be a facility that really expands on the whole plant knowledge, unique plants, and integrate that with entertainment for children. And from there, you can leave the site and leave the main gate, or continue on and go see other parts of the site that you may not have seen. So that's sort of, in a very quick summary, takes you around the entire botanical gardens from one end to the other. What we also have located is a small maintenance area on the south area of the site. That would be located so that we can provide a facility for maintenance of the gardens. We have small storage area there for gardening facilities and things like that. Also a very small parking area for some of the staff to park at, and to alleviate any parking issues on the street. We want to keep that on the site itself, and that'll be well hidden from the adjacent street and sort of integrated with the southern end of the botanical gardens themselves. That is the master plan that we developed to this point. And I'm going to go through a few of the detail areas, and starting with the children's garden. And we think this is just a fantastic opportunity to create this great playground. Sort of, it may include an interactive water feature, incorporating plant material, sculpture, really unique pieces of play equipment that really plays off on the botanical nature of the gardens. And you can see here in the blow up, it's a walkway system around this garden. It'll be fenced for security, a very low fence, but it'll be fenced off from the street with a higher fence, as it will be the botanical gardens themselves. But the children's garden inside the botanical gardens is sort of an area to its own. It will have the classroom facility, which can teach classes for children, education classes, and also adjacent restrooms for people in the park who need to use the restrooms. The second area in some detail I want to show you was what we're calling the West Gardens Tour. And this is that first area as you leave the entry to the south. And this takes you through a series of gardens that will have different themes, as I said, following any number of pathways that take you either to the Tea House Garden Cafe, or you can take these smaller side paths that go into individual gardens and allow you to explore the gardens at your own pace, or it may be on a guided tour. You could also go over the footbridge over the stream that takes you onto another part of the gardens if you want to sort of avoid going through the Tea House garden area. This takes you onto the central lawn and the East Gardens. Also, I think very important part of this is the introduction of cultural arts and sculpture. And we talked about that in our presentation back in December, and that there's such a great opportunity to introduce local artists, national artists to a facility such as this, because the setting is so spectacular, and it really is a unique opportunity to incorporate art. And we've shown here with some red dots some of the places that you could incorporate art, and it's endless, because whether they're permanent installations or temporary, there's so many opportunities to introduce different types of art and sculpture into the project itself. I wanted to focus on one opportunity here. This is the lake feature that we have adjacent to the ficus tree. We've done a section, and the section cuts through the white line you see there looking eastward. And you can see here, this is what it would look like with the water surrounding the tree. We have a large fountain feature in the lake, possibly as a way to create that ambience of the water feature, the noise. We could have some permanent art installations around the lake. And then what we could do is during a special event, we could actually introduce a major piece of art into the lake itself, or maybe it's sculptures that we introduce around the entire gardens in different locations. And as a special art fair, art festival, there's just so many opportunities here to do this types of things, and all different types of artists, whether they be local, featuring local artists, or national artists. I think it's just a really great opportunity to elevate the level of the botanical gardens on a cultural level. On the actual northeast corner where we have the McNab House, and I'll just describe the major components of that is the house itself, which you see on the site now. We've come up with a preliminary concept for the rear addition to the house of a kitchen facility. We also have the garden bar, which is in the historic garage facility, and then of course the event pavilion. And James Bowers now, who is our architect leading the effort on this for the renovation of the house and the improvements around that area, will do a brief discussion about the house itself.
Thanks, Randy. The house has three major components. We have the house itself, which is indicated in blue. This will be programmed obviously as a restaurant. The second component is the bar area located on the bottom of your screen, indicated in green. And then we have a patio that connects both of those components with exterior seating and direct access to the gardens to the south or to your right. And then the third component that we have is the kitchen, which is directly to the south of the house itself, indicated in the pink and fuchsia. And as you can see, there was great effort to not interact with the house in terms of constructability. We are maintaining the original character of the house as much as possible. And so that is something that was critical for us in moving forward. The house has 3 levels connected with elevators and stairs. Moving on to the second floor, we have private dining areas specifically. And for the garden bar, we have storage. And then moving on to the basement is located directly under the house and the kitchen areas. We have provided a wine bar indicated in blue. And then we have some ancillary program for the kitchen area indicated in green, and the overall restrooms for the McNab restaurant, as well as the connection with the elevators and the stairs into this basement level. And with that, overall, that is where we stand with the program of the McNab restaurant and bar. With that, I give it back to you, Randy.
Thanks, James. In addition, of course, James will be working on the design of the event pavilion, the garden tea house, the classroom and restroom building, which will all be components in the project that are architectural and will be complementary to the McNab House, but certainly that is a feature in the park by itself that is so unique that we certainly don't want to copy it. We're going to enhance it and make it look even and better in a new context. So again, this is the concept plan that we've developed till this point. And with that, I can turn it back over to Nguyen or whoever would like to lead.
Thank you, Randy. So we do have some questions that came in and some comments as well. So right now, what I'll do is I'll read the questions and moderate who should answer those questions. So the first question we have, really a comment and a question is, love it. We are so lucky to live in this neighborhood. Will there be a volunteer board? Well, absolutely. You know, volunteers help us cut down on the cost and maintenance costs, and we want participation. So, you know, when you can have somebody that wants to volunteer on a board, we'll never turn that down. So, you know, we've always thought about this being modeled after the Miami Beach Botanical Gardens, where there was a 501c3 conservancy that was set up to run the botanical gardens and also to do the fundraiser. We're going to need volunteers for the fundraisers as well. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for volunteering. The next question is parking is going to be an issue. Southeast 2nd Street is busy, cut-through street. With all the things proposed, will visitors to the restaurant, tea house, and other areas of the gardens park? Randy, I think you showed some of the parkings there. What we have to the west of this, west of the main gate, CRA owns those properties on the west side of 22nd Avenue. That was always considered to be, you know, the parking to help service this restaurant. But also, you know, the CRA and the city also work hand in hand to come up with this master transit plan. If you've seen in the recent press releases from the city implemented circuit transit, a micro transit, that will help on cutting down the parking issues as well. So we're always trying to be ahead of the parking demand, and things are in place to look at additional lands for a parking structure where additional parking could be constructed because this is going to be a destination. So we do want to have adequate parking and a parking system in place to handle that. So we are working on that now. Is the vision of the house to be open to tours? Yeah, I mean, it's a historic structure. We want everybody to enjoy it. That's why the whole goal of this project is to preserve the McNab House in the garage. It's you know, the best use for the house, honestly, is an adaptive reuse to be a restaurant, but it is open to the public, and hopefully we can set up the conservancy that maintains the gardens to also be part of, you know, giving tours of the historic house. When will the artist call should be public? It will be a call to Broward County Cultural Affairs. No, the city of Pompano Beach has a cultural affairs department. The city works very closely with cultural affairs and cultural arts. And, you know, it's our goal to include the public art component, as Randy indicated on his slides. This is a prime opportunity, a great venue to showcase public art, exhibitions, and cultural affairs activities. So as we move forward with the Botanical Gardens concept and the development of this whole project, cultural affairs from the city cultural affairs department will be involved. You know, there was one comment about the homelessness in the park. Like, you know, if, as I stated in the first outreach meeting, this project is not to take care of the vagrancy and homeless issues. This park and this redevelopment of the park is a CRA's initiative to activate pretty much a dead space on Atlantic Boulevard. This is a prime commercial boulevard. Our goal is to make it better. Similar to the beach project and the pier development, it was a nice beach. The CRA got involved and enhanced the beach and look at it now. This is really the same concept as what we did on the beach side, but on this side of the barrier island. This is going to transform this whole neighborhood, this whole corridor, and keep that urban fabric of commercial activity along Atlantic Boulevard. What we're trying to create is a destination, and also to enhance what's already there. We all know McNab Park very well. It's not working in its current condition. It's a decent park. The only attribute that gets used is the tennis court. We're trying to enhance it, trying to make it better, and that's why you have this master plan concept before you. Let me see what other questions here. Besides visual arts, how will you incorporate other arts? Will there be dance floor for performance, recreational dancing? Well, that's a possibility in any of the venues, the wedding venues, the venue space that we're constructing as well.
Newen?
Yes.
Just wanted to mention also, one of the things that we added on the plan is you see the great lawn or the central lawn there, and to the upper right-hand corner is a small little pod that's in the middle of a walkway. The idea for that was like sort of a very small outdoor stage where we could have music played, we could have speeches given, lectures given, and things like that. So we're incorporating those different components into the garden design to use that to its maximum opportunity. Introducing music, that could be introduced to the entire gardens, in fact, with a sound system. And whether maybe there's something being done at the event pavilion, then that music and that sound can be amplified through the entire gardens for everyone in the garden to enjoy something that's happening in part of the garden.
That's a great point, Randy, because when you look at the great lawn on the beach, when that was proposed, we never thought it would be so utilized as it is today for yoga, for other events that people are just utilizing that open space. So for any of those recreational dance activities, that is a good location for that. Okay, so another question is, what is the seating capacity of each venue? James or Randy, can you answer any of that?
James would be best to answer that.
I'm sorry, say that again, Newen.
Yeah, what is the seating capacity of each venue?
Right, so the seating capacity for the restaurant will be between 150 and 200 seats. So right now, because of COVID, we're coming up with different layouts to be able to address the current situation. But the intent is to have between 150 and 200 seats within the facility. And that would account for interior and exterior.
Okay. The next question is where would the community garden be? What part will edible plants play in the restaurant?
Well, we have not designed, as I said earlier, the individual gardens, which we have sort of broken down to the East Gardens and the West Gardens. They've been not planned or designed as of yet. We'd like to introduce an edible garden. I'm not sure, depending on what the definition of a community garden is. From my experience, community gardens are typically more where people actually come and do the gardening in the space. They require quite a bit of space because of, depending on how many people are interested. And I'm not sure we're going to have enough space in such a small area to have what I would consider to be a true community garden, where the people actually are doing, growing their own produce. Now, we have the opportunity to possibly have some type of a garden in the park that could provide elements for the restaurant or the event pavilion, but we'll be looking at that as we develop the garden concepts.
Okay, next question is, will the classroom and event space be open to reservation by the public, i.e. community groups? If so, will a fee be charged to meet at these facilities? I don't think we've gotten to that point. I don't think if it's a meeting by the public, it's going to be a charge rate. I mean, the event space is really designed for weddings and venues like that, or corporate retreat. But we can always work that out in the future, as you know, this is a public park, and that really hasn't been set up and thought about yet at this stage. At this time, how many parking spaces are projected? Randy, you know, offhand on that one?
I think around on the on-street parking, we have probably in the range of 25 or 30. I actually haven't counted them because we added them on Atlantic Boulevard. We've also added them on 2nd Street. So I haven't added them all up. And of course, we haven't looked at the opportunity for the off-street parking on the city property to the west. And that would be the layout of a surface parking lot there, which would be substantially more than we're getting just on the street right there.
Which one's next? Okay, so another question was, restaurant needs to be 160 seats to be profitable. And I would like to know if the event structure is part of the restaurant, since I believe the McNab House can only hold 80 people tops. Randy, do you want to answer that one, or James?
Well,
I think you answered part of it.
Yeah,
before.
the event pavilion is going to be operated both in conjunction with the restaurant so that it could be catered by the restaurant, but it also could be catered by other facilities. And that was important that we allow that flexibility in the design. And that's why you see sort of a separate structure. It's in close proximity and very serviceable by the kitchen to the McNab House, but it also could be serviced by other facilities. It also has its own outdoor seating and dining areas, so that you could have an event at the event pavilion and then provide the seating around the event pavilion on the lake that's not in conflict with any type of restaurant outdoor dining for the McNab House itself. So we've tried to really maximize this concept of outdoor dining, utilizing the lake as a focal point for the project. Really, I think they can work together, but the event pavilion could also be a separate facility on the site. James, do you have anything else you'd?
No, I completely agree with you. As indicated on the plan, you can see a covered area that connects the kitchen to the event pavilion. So we allowed for maximum flexibility in the future. Yes, there's a connection to kitchen event pavilion, but it can also be catered through a different entity.
And just to that last question, Nguyen, there are 35 parking spaces on the street around the site. I thought there's 35 on the plan at this point.
Yeah. Another one was, I love the plans. What are the sizes of the various areas described? What will be done for security and for preventing this from becoming a homeless camp? That kind of goes along with another question is, will the garden be fenced and will there be a fee to visit the garden? So to answer the question on the security, the idea of this, and like I said, if you haven't been to Miami Beach Botanical Gardens, it is right next to the Miami Beach Convention Center. You would never know that there's a botanical garden right there in downtown. That whole block is fenced, and it's lush landscaping around it where there is very controlled access. So similar in fashion on this one, there will be a fence that goes around it to provide the security and perhaps have this area with cameras and security to prevent any issues in there overnight. As we all know in the redevelopment business that if you activate a space, the vagrancy and the homelessness, they tend to go somewhere else. The issue that McNab Park is encountering now is a very passive park in an urban setting. So when the public doesn't use the park that often, you have these issues that do come up. So what we're trying to do is activate it, and a lot of those issues will go somewhere else. Again, this isn't a project to handle the homeless and vagrancy issue. This is really an economic development project. How will you solicit restaurant operators? Will there be a local independent preference to celebrate the uniqueness of this amazing project? We agree with that. We think this is a very unique project. And I hope, this, if done properly, you will see the benefits of this project similar to the one we did on the beach. We are ready to solicit for a letter of interest for restaurant operators. We have been holding off. We've gotten a lot of interest from operators to ask, when are we going to bring somebody on board? That's really the next step, as when we start into plans to convert the house to a restaurant use. We will need that operator to help us do that. So right now, if you look at the site, the house is almost lowered onto the foundation, and now it's a safe site to visit. So we can let the operators, the potential operators that's going to respond to the solicitation, take a look inside the house and to tour the house. So we are about ready to release that solicitation and really look at a restaurant operator or even a developer for the commercial pieces of this project. This question is for you, Randy. Will topiary or bonsai be part of the educational and display and or art installations?
I think that, I said, the individual themed gardens have not been selected yet. We look, for example, if you've been to the Miami Beach one, they have a very small Japanese garden. And, my feeling on that is it's such a small area. They were really not able to really give much of a gesture to the whole Japanese design concept, which is very popular in botanical gardens. I think the idea of topiary is very interesting and related to art and sculpture, because there are some artists out there who actually are using that to create some rather spectacular artworks. So I think that that's certainly an opportunity. I think we don't want to be like a Disney where, all the plants are manicured to be elephants or dolphins and things like that. But I think if there's a purpose for the topiary, and bonsai, that it would certainly be integrated with the project. Some of the gardens in California that have botanical bonsai gardens are absolutely spectacular. The one in Los Angeles is amazing, and it's certainly a great tourist attraction. So we'll be looking at that. But because of the scale of this project, we have to be careful that we really maximize the opportunity in very small areas without sort of losing the effect of the overall project.
One question is, who will be the land surveyor responsible for construction layout? I think it's a little too premature on that. We're not at that stage yet. This is just a master plan concept. So the next stage will be site plan, and really that's when the surveyors and the contractors can evolve. So we're only at the master plan concept stage. Will there be any activity to encourage residents to create their own gardens, classes, handouts, etc.? Randy, you want to answer that one?
This comes back to the community garden. As Nguyen said, we'd love volunteers to come in and help manage the garden, operate the garden, volunteers who could work on the gardens themselves. I know that Miami Beach does that. They also have a day where they sell garden plants to the community that they actually cultivate in the gardens, and we'd be looking at that, possibly utilizing the maintenance area, the maintenance building as also a public sort of nursery garden. That has not been worked out yet. Actually having private public gardens is going to be very difficult on this site, and not really what a botanical garden does. Community gardens are quite a different aspect this type of project, and I don't think it would work here. But we certainly want to reach out to the community and get them involved wherever we can, and that can come on many different levels, whether it's special events or ongoing maintenance of the gardens and things like that. The community is going to be more than welcome to get as involved as we can. Providing community gardens is probably not feasible on such a small site.
Another question is, can you describe the tea house concept? Would a nice coffee barista be included, nicer European style?
That's very specific. Well, we called it a garden cafe tea house because it really could take on different, it's a place that is, away from, sort of isolated in the garden, off on its own, but at some place you can go and have a refreshment. We haven't defined the interior spaces. We haven't defined the type of drinks they're going to be serving. I think we'd all like to have different types of things there available for people using the gardens, but this is a small public facility in the gardens that if you're there for a couple hours, you can go and have something to drink without having to feel you have to go to the restaurant and sit down at a restaurant table. This is more of a sort of come and have something and leave and continue to explore the garden. So but the type of beverages or maybe small food venue that it has, none of that's been decided yet, but we'll certainly be looking at anything that makes the gardens better and an opportunity.
The next comment and question is, I so love this plan. Could there be a trolley from a nearby location to the garden? Well, as previously mentioned, the city just implemented the micro transit system with the golf carts. That is run by Circuit Transit. And that was the idea, is if you're in that area, you can call Circuit Transit, they'll pick you up and they'll take you to that destination. So this is in that destination area. When you're talking about a trolley system, it's a bigger area. As we develop and redevelop a little further to the west in the northwest district of the CRA, as we create more destination locations, then that's when we'll probably start looking at some sort of public transit trolley system that will take people around there. One question for you is, how is the water going to be provided, Randy?
Well, the lake feature is going to have to be a controlled lake. We can't, rely on rainwater only, because it can be very dry and the lake could be empty, or very wet and flooded. So the water features in the park will be a controlled system where the water will be filtrated, kept clean, and appropriate for whatever we're doing with the lake, whether it's a koi pond or, different components like that. I think it's going to be very important that it be kept clean. Now, these are not swimming pools. We do not want people in the water, but they are definitely going to be supplied by a water system that will have to be renourished as water evaporates. But obviously, when we get rain, we'll also have to have an overflow where the water is removed from the site, so the ponds and lakes don't overflow. But they're not pools. They're going to be natural looking lakes. But under a controlled situation where we control the level of the water a year round and keep them at a certain level so that it has a healthy environment.
How are you creating different elevations on a flat plot of land to make it more interesting?
Well, that's exactly what we did. The tea house and the garden cafe are you'll go through the gardens and you'll get higher and higher as you head to the southwest corner of the site. And that lake adjacent to the tea house is actually elevated. I'm not sure how much yet, because it'll depend on what we have to do to preserve the existing trees, because you see the trees on here. We can't change the grade around those trees without hurting them. So we'll have to look at ways, but I think it's a great opportunity to create some interest, have a waterfall, rocky stream effect going from one lake to the other. So we definitely want to create that effect if possible, and yet preserve all the trees that are there, or at least respect the nature in which they're growing now.
What is the approximate acreage of the park? Do you know offhand?
I think it's just over 3 acres. I've measured it several times, and I think it's around 3 acres.
Yeah, I think you're correct. It's a little bigger than Miami Beach Botanical Gardens,
Yeah.
but I recall right around 3 acres.
Yeah, approximately.
Is there any plans to replenish the existing park amenities that are going to be removed when the gardens are constructed, perhaps through the purchase of adjacent properties? That is something that we are looking at and contacting adjacent property owners on. Especially with the tennis court, that is the probably the most used amenity in that park. So there are ongoing discussions with adjacent property owners on purchasing. Who owns the vacant lot to the south of the garden? Can it be used for parking? I believe it's an entity that owns that southern portion. Any properties around there can be used for parking. So we are in discussions with all adjacent property owners for all types of uses. One of the most important things is parking. So we are aware that, to make this successful, we have to have adequate parking. So we are working with adjacent property owners on acquiring properties for that. Randy, this is one's for you. Is how deep is the lake? Love the concepts.
Well, we've already met with the city forestry department to talk about saving the ficus tree and making sure that that's going to have a long life after we develop this fantastic garden around it. And of course, working around the root system of that tree is going to be critical to maintaining its health, how big the island is around it to maintain the existing grade. The lake is not going to be deep. I'm guessing no more than maybe 18 inches deep at the most. We certainly don't want anybody falling into it and having a problem there, but there is a depth that's ideal for keeping it cleaner. If it's too shallow or too deep, you get different situations occurring. So I'm guessing it's going to be from 1 foot to 1.5 feet deep at the most. That's my guess at this point.
Another question is, are the gardens going to have set visitation hours? We really haven't gone down to that detail on the operations of the garden. The idea of this garden has been discussed about having the gardens lit up at night because it's very magical at night. So that's an opportunity for us to have events at night and to light it up at night. So unlike most city parks that close at dusk, this one may have an opportunity to be some events at night. So again, we haven't really decided on the hours until we get the structure set up on the maintenance of the garden and who's really responsible for the garden piece. How will sustainability and climate resilience education be part of this project? How would this project be consistent with responsible environmental practice? Randy, you want to do that?
So you want me? I think it's very important for us that this be a project that respects the natural landscape. If you even look at some of the detail on the plan, for example, the tea house roof is all landscaped, and to reduce the heat impact of heat reflection off the building, the use of materials, drainage systems. If we go to a lighting system, trying to integrate that with solar, a system would be ideal. But we'll be looking at different ways to maximize those opportunities throughout the gardens. Also, the long-term maintenance of a project like this is really significant, and so we'll also look at ways of even the selection of plant material to reduce long-term maintenance. But these gardens are very, very maintenance intensive, and I think there will be ways that we'll look at trying to reduce that overall in the long term by the selection of plant material, their hardiness for this area, whether they're native or non-native, and things like that. So we'll be looking at all those different aspects as we develop the gardens. And I'm sure and the building's the same thing with the event pavilion, which is brand new, the tea house and the classroom restroom. unlike the McNabb House, which we're not going to be putting solar panels on the top of the McNabb House, but there's other opportunities for use of flat roofs for different things, water collection, things like that. So we'll be looking at all those different aspects.
How long would the construction process take? How will traffic flow on Atlantic Boulevard be impacted during the construction process? Any ideas on taking a stab at that?
Well, that's going to be depending on the phasing of the project. I think that the idea is that the house will be moved forward first, probably, to get that going, and that area of the gardens and the outdoor cafe and all of that. How much of the lake around the ficus tree is built in a phase one. I don't think this is going to be all built at one time. It'll take several years to develop this overall. The actual construction of any one phase is not really that long. I think it's just the phasing of the entire project to get this built. This is a significant effort. This is not just building a city park. This is building a botanical garden, which is a whole different thing than a city park. I think the impact on Atlantic Boulevard is fairly minimal because we have the entire block. We have access from both the east and west. So other than some construction work that may go on for either on-street parking or whatever, I think most of the access to this park can be contained within the site and from the east and west and have very little impact on Atlantic Boulevard during construction. And the site's big enough that when we're building the gardens, we could actually stage much of the construction inside the garden site itself as well. But this is a long-term project. I don't think this is going to be built in a year or two. So I'm speaking for the city there, but I think I'm being fairly accurate that this is a big effort. I mean, this is going to be unlike anything the city has ever built.
This is not an overnight project. To do it right, we're definitely going to take our time to get all the pieces in place correctly. The pier didn't happen overnight. It's still going on. And look at that impact to the beach side. This is something that is like I said, a transformative project on this side of the intercoastal, and it will take time. Will the gardens have an admission fee? Can we walk through without a fee? That was always the intent. Again, if you look at Miami Beach Botanical Garden, it's a public park. The city owns the park and leases it out to a conservancy organization that runs the park. So through that conservancy, it's all about fundraising. It's about corporate sponsorships. It's about donations to keep it going. So that is our goal. This is a public park. So we don't intend to charge admission on this park. Will sidewalks be built to provide safe access to the park, restaurant, or neighborhood residents? Randy?
As urban designers, we want pedestrian access to this park is critical. We have a big issue with parking because so many people drive. We also hope that a lot of people walk to this park, and you'll see sidewalks on the plan on every side outside the fencing so that you can walk around the park to get to a location where you can enter the park. But this is going to be a very pedestrian friendly site because we want people to walk from the community coming down from Atlantic Boulevard and really not just drive here. Ideally, everybody would walk, but we know that in our society that doesn't work. So, but pedestrian access is very important on this project and will be considered all aspects of it as we move through the design.
This is another question, and I think I answered it before. Once building is completed, who will be in charge of managing the entire property? Will this be owned by the city or it's a standalone nonprofit? This is always going to be owned by the city. This is city land, it's public land. It's going to be a public park. So the city will maintain it and own it, or the conservancy will maintain it and own it. Whatever that entity is, the land is still public land and will remain in the city. Given our Florida weather, is there a potential to provide cover or expanded canopy areas for some of the exterior patio seating areas? I guess that's for James.
Yes, of course. I mean, at this point, we're schematic. We're at a schematic level, but we can definitely look into providing more coverage in some of these larger open areas.
There's a lot of questions about parking. Again, I think we answered the parking one. We are using the CRA lots to the west of this, but there's an opportunity to look at more parking areas with adjacent properties. So we will have adequate parking for this project. How many sides of the house will be visible? Will it be visible from the North Atlantic Boulevard?
So visibility, north, east, and west, 100% visibility. On the south side is where we have located the kitchen, about 8 feet from the structure itself. So in essence, you have 3 facades that are fully visible in those 3 directions.
Another question is, are you going to professionally list this opportunity for negotiations? Yes. Will the basement level be fully underground or half a story down? Is there a risk of touching the water table?
It's a partial basement, and so we've elevated the house about 4 feet, and so we're going down 4 feet above the water table. So there is no, there's no concern or major concern about hitting the water table in construction.
Will a portion of the plants chosen be historically accurate to the time period of the house, maybe plants surrounding the home?
That's something we'll certainly look at. That could be a whole theme garden in itself, historical plants, sort of what was planted back at that time, at the turn of the century when the house was built, and what was characteristic of that. It's in a botanical garden, you have to be careful because there's the plant material plays a part, but also the layout and the design of the garden is very important. And historic gardens typically were more formal, and I don't know what the landscaping around the McNab House was originally. I looked at old photographs and that, and it's hard to see how much of the gardens there were around the house, but we'll be certainly looking at that as an opportunity for one of the theme gardens. And the plant material that was grown around the house. I know that some of the trees at the original house hopefully will be moved to this site and used on this site because of the redevelopment of the old site.
Another question about the seats and stuff of the restaurant. I think we answered that before. You know, what people, what restaurateurs nowadays, it's a different concept. And James, you can probably answer this. The house is only going to hold so much. You know, the biggest focus is going to be the outdoor seating and the courtyard to house that 150 to 200 seats. You know, before, when we were looking at designing restaurants, you know, everyone was like, well, you know, we have to have enclosed space, you know, because of our unpredictable South Florida weather. We need more enclosed space. However, you know, after COVID, we've learned that restaurateurs and operators really want more outdoor space. They want distance. So the seats, you know, like I said, the house can only accommodate so many seats. The rest of it will be outside.
I've showed that in the on the slide, the area that is a very large outdoor dining, cafe, and bar area between the restaurant and the bar, and from Atlantic all the way to the lake. So there's a very large component of this project, which will be outdoor seating, outdoor gardens related to the restaurant itself.
Here's one question is, who will maintain the garden? I think we answered that before. Cost and iguana control. That's a good question because I think that came up at the first outreach meeting about how will we control pests and iguanas.
Well, that will be clearly an ongoing effort in Florida. because if they get out of control, they become a nuisance and not productive. But obviously that will be an ongoing program for the gardens themselves to make sure that they're they're safe for people to walk through, and that there's no one dominance like iguanas that take over the park in the future. So I mean, the fence around this is going to be fairly porous so that things can get through. We're not building a wall around it, I don't think, and so we'll just have to make sure there's an ongoing program to maintain the park.
Okay, so the previous question I read was incorrect about community gardens. The question was not about community gardens. It was, will there be any activity to encourage people to create their own gardens? Basically, not a garden at McNab House, but at their own place. Will there be any programming activities for that?
Well, I think that there could be obviously classes conducted here, whether it's in one of the classroom by the children's garden, or at the event pavilion, or outdoors on the event lawn, the central lawn. There's great opportunities here for having public classrooms, public workshops, inviting the public in on a weekend, a Saturday afternoon to get certain training and plant material. A lot of the botanical gardens do programs like that, where they teach the community better ways to grow certain types of plants, garden plants and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity for that. And this space that we're coming up with we're trying to be absolutely as flexible as possible to accommodate all those sort of unknowns at this point, and allow flexibility for the city to really create a component in the community that the community gets to take advantage of.
Will there be bicycle parking on site? That one I can answer. We encourage all forms of transportation. What we are trying to do is create a walkable city. So, less dependency on personal vehicles, and we encourage people to park in the parking structures, park in satellite locations, and use any form of method. So I'm sure bicycle parking will be one of those requirements as we go through the building permitting process. Any school bus parking for school tours to the gardens? I know that one of the goals is to do a drop-off location on Atlantic. So definitely there will be drop-off locations there. We'll have to address the parking issues on school buses, but right now it's a little premature for that. What are the next steps after tonight? Randy, you want to stab at that?
Yeah, I think the next steps, we're going to do some analysis of the adjacent streets for the city to make sure that the addition of the on-street parking works without having to acquire adjacent properties. So we're going to be looking at that. James and the architects are going to work on developing the building concepts for the event pavilion, the tea house, and the restrooms. And our scope right now on this project is to develop it to a conceptual level. We are not under scope with the city to do full construction drawings. The idea was that because when we first started this process, we really weren't sure where this was going to go and how big things were going to be and what components are. We decided that we would work on the concept first, come up with this master plan, gets the community involved with looking at the master plan, giving us comments on the master plan, making improvements to the master plan if the comments came in and people felt, well, that would truly make it much better. So we're in the process right now of clearly presenting tonight. This is the first time we've shown anybody the plan, so you're seeing this for the first time, and we'd like to get feedback on it, and we will try to make improvements where we can and make modifications where we can. But I think as the team goes, the city and the design, us as the designers, we're really excited about this plan. We're very happy with what has been developed. We're excited how it's come along in a fairly quick time, because it's a very intensive plan. There's a lot of work to do yet in the next phases of all the construction drawings and all the planning and all of that. But right now we're going to stick to the master concept plan and develop some of the architectural components a little further. And then at that point, the city can decide, do they want to phase it? And we've talked about what could we build first. Is it, for example, the children's garden and the McNab House on the north portion, and then develop the southern portion later as funds become available and things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm not sure exactly how far we're going to go in the next, in the near future. We're working on the plan and making it better.
Will there be a written record of questions and answers after the call ends? That one I can answer is yes. The meeting's recorded, video is recording, as well as we will type responses on all the questions that were asked. So that will be made available. This was another question that I think came up in our first outreach meeting. Will the park use reclaimed water for the grounds?
I don't know, and I don't know if is reclaimed water available in this area of the city.
I have to look at it. I
Okay.
believe it may be. However, I think in previous discussions on reclaimed water, there might be some impurities in the reclaimed water that may be detrimental to the botanical gardens.
Okay. We haven't looked at that as of yet.
Yeah. Okay. Will the plant collections in the botanical gardens be identified and documented through collections management so that the goals of display, education, research, and conservation be available?
Yeah, ideally, yeah. The whole idea is that once the idea the direction for the theme gardens is developed, we know what types of gardens we're going to have, whether they're going to be focused on a certain plant, a certain community, a certain theme, and there's so many options. It's endless because we've looked at a lot of them, everything from vegetables to tropical plant material to exotics to bonsai to topiary. We will develop that, and then I think it will be up to the conservancy or whatever is developed by the city to maintain the gardens, to make sure that that is continued with the introduction of new plants, the maintenance of existing plants, propagation of plant material. As far as the education, I know that, for example, the Miami Beach Botanical Garden, you can walk through the gardens on a tour, which is very nice, but a lot of people don't like to take a tour. So they have a little station that you come to at each garden, and your app on your phone, then you type in the number of the station you're at, and it gives you a whole breakdown of the educational background that is needed to understand what you're looking at in the botanical garden. And it's not just plant material, but it's certain types of plant materials or rarities or certain conditions. But all of that will be integrated in both the design up front and in the ongoing maintenance of the gardens themselves.
Okay, so we got one last question for now. The house seems to be showing signs of increasing structural damage as it sits. Is this being addressed? Is house being maintained? So, as a matter of public record, just to get it out there, what you're seeing that seems to be structural damage is right there on the cantilevered porch, and a little history on that. That's always been there. That's a wood beam that's rotted, and it occurred at the existing site. The weight of the house is about 1 million pounds, so it's very heavy. And when you have this cantilevered porch area and the weight of the house settled over the years. So that crack started at the original location. So as the house mover lifted the house up, the stucco really fell off and really exposed the rotted beam. The intent when we go through this adaptive reuse is to renovate that and to replace that beam and fix it. It is not anything against the structural integrity of the house. It's just a rotted beam that when we move the house, you can really see it when the stucco fell out. So the intent is to replace that and to fix it. So structural integrity is there still. Yeah. So I guess this one came in as, is the city going to have any control over influence of the sustainability when it comes to a single-use plastics being used at the site? I believe, that may be for the restaurateur. I believe there's policy in place to use paper in restaurants in the city, but that one we'll address when we get the restaurateur on board. And that's it. Those are what? Actually, hang on. I assume there's no plan to expand the park in one way or another to the north of Atlantic Boulevard. Is that a correct assumption? And no plan to add parking on the north side of Atlantic? That is correct. We have viable businesses on the north side of that block. We don't own any properties there. The city doesn't own any. The CRA doesn't own any. Right now we're focusing on a redevelopment project for McNab Park. So no, there is no intention to expand the park to the north. Have you considered a glass enclosed conservatory displaying orchids, ferns, bromeliads, etc.? Randy?
Well, as I said at the very beginning of this presentation, is that we have the great fortune of living in a climate which we can grow almost anything depending on how you set it up. And I don't think that we need to resort to what the northern gardens have to do, which is interior gardens or conservatories or things like that, because we have the ability to create that outdoors on a year-round basis. So the space is very limited. We want to maximize the opportunity, and I think we can do it all outdoors here and create a great environment.
Okay. Well, that concludes the Q&A part. They will be available and made public, and we will get the responses to those questions. So with that said, anything else from the design team before we close this out?
No, I want to reiterate how exciting this is and how great this has been to work with the city. And I think this is going to be just a spectacular addition to the community. I think with James's architectural input on the design of these buildings in the park, it's really going to be a fantastic site and a great amenity for the community. And we thank everybody for coming tonight and participating, and please continue to participate. That only makes the project better.
Well, thank you again, everybody. And, you can always find the information on our website. The same link that you found the link to this Zoom meeting, we will try to get the questions up there, all the questions and responses as well. So stay tuned for more. This is very exciting, and we are very fortunate to be able to perform on this very, very important project for this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.